Let's start in verse 1, read through 3. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. I could probably stop right there, couldn't I? But we need to define this a little bit. Children, yes, obey your parents. Let's read on here. Verse 2. Honor thy father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise, that it may be well with thee and thou mayest live long on the earth. The children here have a duty to obey your parents. It's set forth right here in the scripture for us. But I would say here, if you look it says here, obey your parents in the Lord. If we stop right and just say, obey your parents, there's a problem with that. We are commanded to obey our parents when we're children. But we're also commanded to obey our parents in the Lord. Which means, if our parents tell us to do something that is not scriptural, that is not in God's law, you don't obey them at that point. This is the only time I have found in the Bible that the child is told not to obey the parents. If they don't tell you to do something correctly, if they tell you to do something that's contrary to God's law, that is the only time that you would disobey your parents. Now, does a mother and a father have instructions on discipline? We could do a complete whole lesson on this alone. And today's society, we have so many things that are not right. We have so many things, so many laws in force right now that tell us that we cannot discipline our children. But if you would go over to Proverbs again. I'm going to start with Proverbs chapter 22, verse 6. And I just want to ask, is there anyone in here that can quote this scripture without looking at it? I know we can because it's been on the little blue Bible camp shirts forever. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. That goes back to the father being the spiritual leader, that we do need to train our children. We need to train them in the way of the Lord. But there are times that the children need some discipline. You would look into chapter 13, verse 24. Proverbs 13:24. He that spareth his rod hateth his son, but he that loveth him chasteneth him times. It's telling us here, if we do not discipline our children, and sometimes with the rod, or switch, or belt, we don't love them if we don't correct them. Now if you would continue to turn over to chapter 19, verse 18. Chasteneth thy son while there is hope, and let not thy soul spare for his crime. Now, one of the interesting things here I see in this verse 18 says, chasteneth thy son while there is hope. When does that hope start? We have to start disciplining. We have to start teaching our children when they're born. I've even heard and read things where children begin to learn in the womb if you read to them and sing to them. So we need to start that discipline at a very, very young age. Again, if you turn on to chapter 22, verse 15. Foolishness is bound in the heart of a child, but the rod of correction shall drive it far from him. Again, we're told to discipline our children when they've done something wrong, they've done something foolish. This is a tool to help them learn. And you look right over, a page or two over in chapter 23, verse 13 and 14. Withhold not correction from the child, for if thou beatest him with the rod, he shall not die. Thou shalt beat him with the rod, and shalt deliver his soul from hell. How many times have we seen in this society today people withholding punishment from their children just so they'll be quiet, just so they'll leave them alone, just themselves. When you become parents, when you become married, when you become parents, if you're not willing to put forth the effort to raise your children correctly, and it's not always easy. It takes time away from the things I want to do to teach my children, to be with them, to raise them. If you're not willing to do that, don't have children. It's that simple. If you don't want to take the time to raise them, don't have them. The instruction book on the family, on marriage, on raising children, we have it right here in our hands. There's nothing else needed. It tells us, as we've seen back in 1 Peter, everything we need to know. And if we do as we're told in 2 Timothy 2:15, if we study to show ourselves approved unto God, who rightly handle the word of truth. And I know I probably didn't get that exactly right as a quote, but if we study the Bible, we'll know what to do. We'll understand how to take care of our children. Are we going to get it right every time? No. I don't think I have, but I've tried. But the question, will it always be easy? No. I want to ask you something else. Will it always be hard? No. Once they get a little age on them, like I have right here, it gets a little easier. But I also know that there are probably some more times to come that we'll have to discuss that. But again, if we would turn over to 1 Corinthians chapter 7. 1 Corinthians 7, verse 2 through 5, it says, "Nevertheless, to avoid fornication, let every man have his own wife, and let every woman have her own husband. Let the husband render unto the wife due benevolence, and likewise also the wife unto the husband. The wife hath not power of her own body, but the husband. And likewise also the husband hath not power of his own body, but the wife. Defraud ye not one the other, except to be with consent for a time, that ye may give yourselves to fasting and prayer, and come together again, that Satan tempt you not for your incumbency." Now, as I read that, this speaks very much toward, again, that there's only one man and one woman in a marriage. And I want to specify that. One man, one woman. Most of the time when we hear, we always go back and we hear there's not one man, or have you heard the saying, it's not Adam and Steve, it was Adam and Eve? This also lays forward to, there's no such thing in God's plan for polygamy. There's no two wives, there's no two husbands. It's one man, one woman. And we look down into verse 3, "Let the husband render unto the wife due benevolence, and likewise also the wife unto the husband." As I look into that, it says, "Husbands, give your wives the benevolence they deserve, and likewise wives to the husbands." Again, as I looked up this definition of benevolence, and I used the Webster's New World Dictionary, it was the 1982 edition. I think that's the one Karen got when she was in college. It's the first definition there. It says it's an inclination to do good, kindness. The second definition, a kindly, charitable act or gift. What's that say to us? What are we supposed to do for our spouse? We need to be kind to them. We need to be charitable. Gifts every once in a while help. Come in both ways. It just helps in the marriage. If we are treating one another in this matter, everybody has a better attitude toward one another. Verse 4, it says, "You belong to your spouse." Or say in verse 4, the wife doesn't have power over her own body, nor does the husband over his. That means you belong to your spouse. That is the only person you belong to. You do not surrender yourself to anyone else. It's not in God's plan.